Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture, the show where we discuss science, technology and culture in its myriad of forms. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve?
I'm good, thanks, Ben. A little bit chilly out here in the backyard, but all good apart from that.
Yeah,
Waiting for spring.
Absolutely. And technically, yes, spring started, at least in the southern hemisphere. All those autumn dwellers in the northern hemisphere, you're going towards the cold. We're looking forward to the heat.
That's right. Although in the northern hemisphere, I think technically they got another 20 days because they don't start till the equinox.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Random fact.
Absolutely. All right. Being September and early September, obviously it's time for more Apple news, and
Yes.
we have to sort of cover that. And given that we're recording this on the 3rd of September, so the event's on the 7th. So depending on when we come out, maybe the stuff would have been announced by the time you're hearing this, or maybe just before. We'll probably approach this not so much about what's expected, but more about where is it all sitting at the moment. Just to give you a bit of a rundown of, and having said that, I'm about to go through some of the things that are expected. So Apple Insider it's got a nice little summary page there. They're expecting that the design will be just a tweaked version of the 6 design, so nothing terribly special there, which is still a good design anyway. Obviously, the next gen chip, a much better camera, and the Plus models may get a dual lens camera. So that's actually the feature that I'm looking at. Probably the most. That's the part that probably interests me the most. They're looking at doing a 32 gig entry level phone rather than the 16, which is probably well overdue. There's potentially a pressure-sensitive home button with haptic feedback, so no mechanism under the home button anymore, which makes sense because they've been doing a bit of that with the MacBooks. The big one, of course, no 3.5mm headphone jack, which apparently is causing all sorts of chaos and disruption out there.
It's the end of the world.
Yes, that's right. And shock horror, the idea of a bundled lightning to headphone adapter. And then some other possibilities are the 256 gig storage tier, maybe a smart connector for the Plus model, all of that sort of, maybe not kind of thing. I guess when in talking about this, I might just start with my point of view, because I'm up for an upgrade at this point. I've got the 2-year-old 6, and for those of you that don't know, I've got a bit of a life cycle thing built in here. I actually get about 8 years usage out of every iPhone, although I haven't quite got to the very first iPhone I got, which was the 4 back in 2010, is in its 6th year of use, and I'm still planning on getting another 2 years out of it, and that's basically got to do with sort of handing it off to family members and all that sort of thing. So if you look at it that way, if you're spending about $1,000, somewhere between $1,000 and $1,300 for one of these phones, I figure 8 years of usage, I'm getting my value out of it. So even though it's the iPhone 7, if that's what it's going to be called, isn't that much more special than the 6, I'm still going to get that sort of life cycle usage out of it. And I don't know about you, Steve, but for me, we will look at when we caught up the other week, and we were looking at those 4K video cameras, and they're about $1,000. You figure, well, I might as well just spend the $1,000 on a new iPhone, get the whiz-bang 4K camera. This will be the 2nd generation one now, because it debuted with the 6S, and apparently the lens is going to be looks like it's around twice the size of what was in the 6S, so it looks like it's going to be a real kick-ass camera. Yeah. That alone is probably enough for me to get it and upgrade, even though probably the rest of it, I don't know if it's really going to be any better necessarily, apart from being faster and more intense.
Yeah, well, look, I think this is a nice little segue into what the real issue is here. I think probably, since 2007 in the launch of the iPhone, maybe 2009, and then 2011 with the 4S, which is still a phone that works very well today. Yeah. There was an expectation. The hardware was getting better. The phone designs were getting better. It's very exciting with each release. your motivation, and I would assume for probably 80% of the people that are going to buy the iPhone 7, the motivation is not the features, it's the life cycle.
Yeah.
They've come to the end of their plan, their 2-year plan, or they have a cycle like your own where you hand off the phone to someone else and it gets used and you get a new one. And that's the beauty of that an Apple product. Not only is it well designed, we know even in this modern disposable age, they still make products that last.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. I doubt there are many people left, although there might be amongst the Samsung fan club, that buy these new phones purely for their features, which I think generally are gimmicks. Apple, as always, never releases gimmicks. They're always going somewhere with whatever it is they're doing. So, for instance, dropping the audio jack from the phone, is the usual Apple procession. The world didn't stop when they dropped the floppy drive from the old Macintosh. The world won't stop when they drop the audio jack. Likewise, you can see with their haptic solution and the pressure touch which they're using now on there, why would you need a button? And taking that button out actually simplifies the phone and the phone design, and that's what Apple are very good at.
Yeah, it makes it more robust. The less moving parts makes it even more durable, if anything.
Absolutely. So, and that's so. I think all we're seeing is a natural progression, and Apple always have a long-term plan.
Yeah. Just to touch on that headphone jack thing, it's caused a lot of hysteria in the media as if this is going to really, contrary to what you just said, that it is going to be the end of the world for so many people who've invested so much money in top-notch headphones or whatnot. But what
about my DVD collection when they drop the optical drop?
There's two sides to this. One is that the majority, I can't see how the majority of people would actually care, because actually how many people literally buy really expensive headphones for this use? How many people would just be using the headphones that came in the box? Yeah. And that's where I'm wondering, where is this a story? Where is this becoming... why is it that people are, the media anyway, are getting fixated on this? On the flip side, though, there might be an argument that, say, when the floppy drive was dropped out of the Mac, and then the CD drive and DVD drive was dropped out of the Mac has a very small install base, so it's only 5%. The iPhone doesn't. It has a humongous install base. Obviously not Android level, but I think that it got to 1 billion iOS devices, didn't it? I think.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that use iPhones, and whereas in the past where the 5% of Mac users were those people who were sort of at the cutting edge anyway and could cop, changes like that, you're going to have a lot of mainstream users that they haven't had to deal with this type of change before, that may not do it as well.
Look, I think it's just the typical fear mongering, because Apple is, as we've said many times, they're designing years ahead. So whatever it is, the reason they're dropping the audio jack now is, and they always have traditionally done it ahead of the curve. They probably should have kept, for everyone's comfort, the floppy drive for an extra, 18 months. They should have kept the optical drive in there for an extra 18 months, but they didn't, because they're going somewhere with their design. And I think because generally, even with the small glitches Apple have had in all their product releases, the media has to jump on something, because otherwise Apple's quite boring. You're going to get something that's nicely designed that works. There's no story in that.
No.
So the only story with an Apple device is to try and find something that people don't like about it, and try and whip up some sort of story around that. Because otherwise, if you take that story out of the equation around the audio jack, what's there not to like about an iPhone 7?
Yeah. Oh, it's dull. There's no changes. It's the same rough. It's pretty much the same design. This is something I wanted to touch on. Actually, was you mentioned before we got on about the iPhone launches in 2007, and it was a quantum leap forward over any phone that was out there before. Now, there was that moment in that keynote where Steve Jobs demonstrated the slide to unlock function, and the jaws hit the floor and there were gasps and all of that sort of thing. Now you fast forward to today, and these phones are not considered anything special or interesting anymore. And That's a problem too. I think it's like, well, what is it that you want? The phones have now become pretty much fully fledged PCs. If you're not someone who has a specialist use, so if you're not a video editor or a 3D modeler or a Photoshop aficionado who requires, that grunty PC, get a plus model, and you probably don't need any other IT requirements. Right. And
pop that plus model in your man bag.
Yeah, that's right. But that's why, you think of that. Why is that not reported as being special? I'm just amazed by that. The phone's gotten to the point where it is that, and there's nothing said about it. But there's no, like you said, it's not a clickbait title. It's not something that will just grab your attention. Oh, a smartphone can replace your PC. In most instances. Yeah, most people probably know that, and it doesn't generate much interest.
Well, that's right, and I think if you want to look forward to positive sort of stories that would come out around phones, the only positive story I can think of that would come around any phone release now, if you exclude gimmicks, I mean, sticking stickers on things or holding your phone upside down and taking photos, I don't know, of your feet or whatever while you're walking backwards, or autofocus, whatever some of those gimmick things do for your Snapchat, that's nothing. But the big things now are battery life. So when they bring out the next generation of batteries, and you can be guaranteed Apple will have them, they'll be flatter, thinner, smaller, and they'll give you longer lasting battery life and quicker charging probably. They'll be straight in the iPhone, and people will go mad for that sort of thing. If you don't like what Apple's releasing, go and get yourself an Android phone like I did. And then just see how you feel about it. This thing I've got is a phone that has a 2-day battery life, but really, it's okay. I guess you just don't appreciate what you've got until you lose it. And that's what people should think about when they, get stuck into Apple. They're by far still the best devices, tech devices.
I just want to touch upon finally just the concept of the PC and computer again. We've touched upon it a couple of times, but it's worth revisiting in light of the fact that there's potentially rumored new MacBooks and that sort of thing coming out. Maybe not at this event, but maybe in a month's time if they might do another event. New MacBook Pros that are probably going to be like the 12-inch MacBook that are super thin and light. Again, you get to a point where you can tell that they're pushing towards the iPad as being the computer now. It's not the in-between device that Steve Jobs talked about. They want the iPad to become the new baseline computer. That's right. Because if you look at the way a lot of the software features in the Mac are now, they're full screen mode, the launch pad. That they're trying, and from what I've heard at Apple stores, when they're showing people how to use them, they're showing them more in iPad style configurations rather than showing them in Mac style configurations, the traditional setups. But the one thing is that, which I think, apart from the battery life thing, which I think is a good one to raise, I think if they can improve that would be, who cares about special gimmicks or whatever? You get, double the battery life and that'll be awesome. But the other thing is, in particular with the iOS devices, is that I'm surprised that they still haven't come up with a specific iOS version for the iPad, because it's still a very mobile centric operating system that works best on the phone, not on a tablet. And if they really did come up with a different version of iOS for the iPad that really took advantage of its screen size and the ability that it should be more like a computer, not that it necessarily has to look like Mac OS, for instance, but something that could do that, that's where it'll really take off. When they announced iOS 10 earlier in the year, I actually am struggling to still see what's different about it compared to iOS 9, apart from an extra layer of emojis in the Messages app.
Well, that's right, and I think you're spot on. I mean, a new MacBook now is going to look like the last MacBook. You just look at the iPhone. So the first three iPhones, or actually the first four iPhones, not the S versions, but each of all looked radically different. Now in a size and a shape and a design, you can't get them much thinner unless you take the audio jack out. You don't want them a bigger size because they're actually working for most people in the sizes that they are.
Yeah.
And same with the MacBook. If it's 13 inches, it's going to be a 13-inch MacBook. It's going to have a lid. It's going to have the base.
A keyboard.
It's in the side.
Yeah.
It's going to be different. Battery life, like you say, and the OS. They're going to be the big changes. I mean, a device has to have a physical shape. It has to have a physicality about it. Once you get to a design point where you achieve things, because you really are never going to get a MacBook that's paper thin, or even if you do, you might not want something that's paper thin.
Yeah.
We're at these levels now anyway, physically, where there's not much more to wring out of these designs. They're mature designs. They have great features and really good usability. So, if people are holding their breath waiting to see something amazing, it's not, whatever is going to be amazing will not look like anything you've got today. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
I guess one final point is Apple's obsession with thinness, and I just wonder if they take the headphone jack out for a technical reason because they think that doing a Lightning port digital audio out is going to provide a better audio experience, I'm all for that. But if they're taking it out just to make the phone thinner, that seems ridiculous to me, because how thin does it need to be, and how thin does it get before it's actually not usable, like it's not comfortable to hold?
I think you're absolutely right, but knowing Apple and the way they work, they'll be taking out that audio jack for both reasons. They want a thinner phone, even if it's by 1 mil. They want more space. They'll probably be able to fill battery space in where the jack is. And the Lightning port will give you a better audio. So what's not to love?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll finish up there, Steve. I guess we'll just have to wait until the event to see what actually happens and see if there's actually any frenzy that occurs afterwards or any uproars about what they do.
Well, unless they can top Samsung's exploding battery, I think it'd be a very boring launch for Apple.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we'll wrap it up there. Don't forget our website, SciTechCulture.com. You can get all of our links and content. Subscribe to us. I'd love to hear from you there. Interact with us on Twitter, Facebook, and Google+. And if you think anyone's interested in these ongoing discussions that Steve and I have on a regular basis, send them to SciTechCulture.com. We'd greatly appreciate that. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.